Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. Minorities unsafe in India. Now, this has been a long-standing narrative and a pain point for the current government, an issue of debate, and this matter looms ever since the Modi government came to power. The government is time and again at several platforms accused of targeting minorities or working against the interest of minorities, and that there is no free speech in the country. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi, attempting to settle the entire minority rights and discrimination debate in the United States of America, from the US Congress, and also on the sidelines of the bilaterals during the joint statements and the questions, answering the questions of the journalists there, Prime Minister Narendra Modi sending out a stern message to all and a clear message to all who claim that minorities are being targeted or are unsafe in Bharat. When questioned at the joint press conference with President Joe Biden, Prime Minister Narendra Modi not just rejecting reports of attacks on religious minorities and free speech, Prime Minister asserting that democracy is in India's DNA and it flows through the veins of Bharat, and that there is no question of discrimination on the grounds of caste or religion if India is deemed as the world's largest democracy. The opposition, closer home, continues to attack the Modi government. On The Right Stand, we bring to you details of what the government claims it has done for the minorities in the country, and also what certain research data actually points out. So, fact versus the narrative, is there a convergence or is there a variance? We'll try and put that detail out also. More importantly, after that question at the joint statement, and to which the Prime Minister answered, he further embellished certain aspects in his address at the US Congress. Let's start with what the Prime Minister responded to at the White House.
लोकतंत्र को हम जीते हैं और हमारे पूर्वजों ने उसको शब्दों में ढाला है संविधान के रूप में, और हमारी सरकार लोकतंत्र के मूलभूत मूल्यों को आधार लेकर के बने हुए संविधान के आधार पर चलती है। मुझे आश्चर्य हो रहा है कि आप कह रहे हैं कि लोग कहते हैं नहीं, भारत डेमोक्रेसी है। और जैसा राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन ने कहा, भारत और अमेरिका दोनों के डीएनए में लोकतंत्र है। लोकतंत्र हमारा स्पिरिट है, लोकतंत्र हमारी रगों में है, लोकतंत्र को हम जीते हैं। कास्ट, क्रीड, रिलीजन, जेंडर, किसी भी भेदभाव को वहां जगह नहीं होती है। और जब हम लोकतंत्र की बात करते हैं, तब अगर ह्यूमन वैल्यूज नहीं है, ह्यूमैनिटी नहीं है, ह्यूमन राइट्स नहीं है, फिर तो वो डेमोक्रेसी है ही नहीं। और इसलिए जब आप डेमोक्रेसी कहते हैं, जब डेमोक्रेसी को स्वीकार करते हैं और जब हम डेमोक्रेसी को लेकर के जीते हैं, तब डिस्क्रिमिनेशन का कोई सवाल ही नहीं उठता है।
No question of discrimination, not just on the basis of caste, community, gender or age, but also even in terms of geographical placement or across the country. That's what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, and he said that the government schemes and the government's measures or benefits are based on the principle of access to all those who are eligible for those benefits, and no differentiation or discrimination. Now, as per the census 2011, the percentage of minorities in Bharat is about 19.3% of the total population of the country. It should have only gone up, not down. Let's say nearly about 20% or 1/5 of Bharat's 1.4 billion population is minorities. That includes Muslims, Parsis, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Jains, and all the other religions, the non-Hindu grouping. Now, we bring to you the facts placed by the Narendra Modi government as per the data given by the then Minorities Affairs Minister, Shri Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi, in the Lok Sabha on the 24th of March 2022. This is what he said. Out of 2.31 crore houses built under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, 31% were allocated in 25 minority-dominated areas. 33% beneficiaries of the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi were minorities. Out of 9 crore beneficiaries of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, 37% were from minority groups. 36% of the beneficiaries of the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana were from minority communities. So this is what the government data as revealed by the Minorities Affairs Minister itself says. Yes, the data is about a year ago, but yes, this is the data that was presented by Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi back on the 24th of March 2022. We can only safely assume that these numbers will remain steady or would have gone up over the last 12 to 15 months. Meanwhile, a recent study also busts the claims made by several opposition leaders who have alleged, not just on national platforms but international platforms, that the Modi government is minority. However, a research by an American think tank, Pew Research Center, based in Washington, D.C., has a different opinion on the situation of Muslims in India specifically, because minorities is oftentimes associated with Muslims. They say Muslims and other minorities, or minorities equal to Muslims. Although many believe it to be a misnomer and Muslims should be considered the second largest majority in Bharat. But let's look at what the report says, especially with the treatment of Muslims. Total 29,999 households were surveyed in 17 different languages. The response rate of 84% in urban areas and 86% in rural areas. 98% Muslims and Christians, they said they are free to practice their religion. The remaining 2% said they were not too free. 2% of the total base, sample base, said not too free. That's what they said, to practice their religion. 90% of the Indians believed important to respect all religions. 72% of Muslims believe there is not a lot of discrimination. 77% Christians believe there is not a lot of discrimination. 75% Hindus believe there is not a lot of discrimination. The numbers very clearly show that this entire narrative is not based on facts. Prime Minister Narendra Modi putting the facts, underlining the importance of the Samvidhan or the Constitution, and also saying if you consider as a democracy, then don't think or don't claim that we are trampling upon the rights of any citizen of Bharat. That's the message. We are not seen to be a democracy, we are a democracy. That's what he emphatically said. Let's go across to author David Frawley and François Gautier, author and journalist, joining us this evening. Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you very, very much, gentlemen. And I sincerely appreciate you joining us on very short notice. Thank you very much. David Frawley ji, if I may ask you, how would you respond, or how would you evaluate two aspects: the Prime Minister's response to this question and also his speech at the US Congress?
Well, Modi's response was quite complete, inspiring, and addressed all the critical factors involved. India is the world's largest democracy. It is by far the most democratic country in its region of the world. It has brought democracy wherever it has gone. Modi has led and met with leaders all over the world. No one has such a personal relationship with so many leaders, from Putin to Biden now, and has addressed with friendliness so many countries. And bringing in International Yoga Day, it was a great triumph to show India's culture and spirituality, and address the critics who say India is not tolerant. You will not find a more tolerant country than India. And he also silenced a lot of this strange media that, of course, goes on from opposition factors. So that is how I would address that. And it's very important for the world to recognize India on its global stage, which Modi has done. He has now become a beacon of peace and democracy. And we see leaders and thinkers over the world taking that up, and also critics being silenced.
Barack Obama, Mr. Gautier, also espoused a similar thought process when he was speaking with Christian Amanpour, and it became a talking point. 70 MPs of the US Congress also wanted President Biden. There was so much of pressure on President Biden exerted by the Dems themselves. Why do you think this is happening? Are the numbers not known? Are the facts not known? Or has India not been able to quell the narrative?
See, the problem is that India is a very faraway country for the Americans, and that you need to live in India to understand India. So I have lived for 50 years in India, and I've studied Indian history. So there are two facts that Mr. Obama should know about. One is that India is probably the only country in the world that accepted all persecuted minorities in their own countries, from the Parsis in Iran, to the Jews in Israel, to the Ahmadis in Muslim countries. So, but it's been a one-way traffic. My experience living in India is that there is a great freedom of religious practice. That, mosques and churches are flourishing here like, nowhere before. They keep growing all the time. And I have never seen that Christians or Muslims are stopped from practicing their own religion. But as I said, it's a one-way traffic, because they, in turn, the Christian and Muslim, Indian Christian and Muslims, go to the United States, are pretending that there is no freedom of religion in India. And this is a grave, grave sin in my eyes, because I have never seen a country like India which has so much tolerance for other religions. In my own country, in France, saints like Amritananda Mai, who established an ashram near Chartres in France, she faced a lot of problems because she was termed as a sectarian sect, and the ministry in France that looks after sects, and she had a lot of problems with the villagers, she had a lot of problems with the French government. So there's a great freedom, and I, as a Frenchman, born and educated Catholic, I have seen, my father came to India with a staunch, I have seen that there is so much freedom in India. So Mr. Obama spoke out of ignorance. I liked the man, actually. I thought he was a decent guy, but he spoke out of ignorance. The problem is that the Indian Christian and Indian Muslims in the United States were giving a bad image of India, a wrong image of India. So these people should be targeted because Mr. Obama spoke out of ignorance.
But how is it that this section or group, one should not, is this a majority, David Frolley, in America? Or do they have they now occupied the ears, or do they have the ear of those who exert the influence? Now, let's say Yusuf comes into play. There are these freedom indexes, democratic indexes, VDEMs, and so many other researches which start getting quoted all over the place. And then you have leaders who push this. Why would they do it?
Well, first of all, this is not a majority thing. Americans don't have a great understanding of India, but the Indian diaspora in America has been very successful, peaceful, popular. There is a counter-Indian culture going on, or a counterculture of India with yoga, Ayurveda, and many other factors. And America is a very divided country already. The Democrats and Republicans are at a borderline, almost what someone even called civil war. There are many groups fighting over many different things, gender rights, so many things. So in that context, India's main issue, it's the same old anti-India forces that worked during the colonial era, leftist influences, and they've been entrenched more in academia and also in media. But the common person doesn't know those so much. And it's also interesting to see that a lot of people in the government, including now the president and Biden and the vice president Kamala Harris, are greeting India in a very positive way. We saw the greeting India got on International Yoga Day in New York City. So we must not let these fringe groups think that they totally represent India. It is true, Francois has put it very well, that these things have been distorted. As you've also said, there are these various strange tests about India, and then what they do is they never play per capita. Oh, India is the rape capital of the world. It has the most rapes. Per capita, that's not true at all. It's 1.4 billion people. Sweden is like 10, 50 times more in that range than India is. So there's a lot of trickiness going on. And these relate to a lot of the same old anti-India influences. And the world doesn't want to see India rise because it's a different civilization. It challenges cultural norms. It's very ancient. And it would change the global diplomacy. But in spite of that, Prime Minister Modi is changing the global diplomacy, and India as peace, democracy, but also ecology and insight is there, and India needs to address its critics both in the media. Jay Shankar has done very good with that, and in academia, this has to be addressed very well. And India has to challenge these distortions that are going on in journalism. And they've done so well, very well in India itself over the last few years, but we need to extend that to the global media as well.
To the world at large. David Frawley, Francois Gauthier, and it's such a photo frame moment for me. I'm going to request my team to just take a snapshot of this for posterity, because I have Mr. Walter Anderson also joining us. All the gentlemen have joined us.
Can I add something? Just
yes,
for
please.
2 seconds?
Yes, Mr. Gauthier. Go ahead, please.
There's a lot of hypocrisy in the West, because you see, for instance, Mr. Obama, we're talking about Mr. Obama. When he became president, he swore on the Bible. I don't know if he's a Christian or not. It doesn't really matter. Now, if an Indian prime minister would swear on the Bhagavad Gita, after all, India is a Hindu majority country. And there are 75 to 80% Hindus still in India. Now, if an Indian prime minister, Mr. Modi, would have sworn on the Bhagavad Gita, there would have been a huge uproar, not only in India, but also abroad. So, there is a sense of superiority, whether it's conscious or unconscious. People like Mr. Obama, the Indologists in my country, in France, they feel that their civilization, my civilization, the Judeo-Christian civilization is superior to the Indian civilization. So they always look at India with a negative prism. They always look at India as a country of lesser people. So this is the problem also. The second problem is that there's a sense of superiority in the West, and also great hypocrisy, because Mr. Obama himself swore on the Bible. America is a Christian country, France is a Catholic country, and nobody is ashamed of that, but they are putting labels on India which are absolutely untrue and unjust.
True, and the interpretation of Hindutva itself is lopsided, and then being a Hindu is also being termed as bad, or if you're a Hindutvavadi, that philosophy misunderstood and then being blamed. Interestingly, the same Pew Research that said that 98% of the Muslims and Christians in our country, in India, feel absolutely safe and believe there is no discrimination, also says 80% of the African Americans, 46% of the Hispanic Americans, and 42% of the Asian Americans stated they experience a lot of discrimination in the United States when asked about religious freedom. Quite surprising that this escapes everyone. But the focus is on asking Prime Minister Narendra Modi the same question over and over again. Walter Anderson ji, namaste. Let me ask you, did Prime Minister Narendra Modi handle himself well? Did he answer that question convincingly? And how do you rate his speech at the US Congress?
Well, I would rate it as an A. A couple of things. He came across in a very friendly, relaxed manner. I mean, he's obviously a very good speaker, and he reads his audience well. And the people who helped him write the speech knew the audience that they were addressing. So that went very well. I think the Indians will come off of this meeting, these sets of meetings, very pleased as of now. And I think one of the major things that they wanted was to have a reflection from the U.S. that India sits at the high table of international politics. And I think Biden went out of his way to indicate that he was prepared to work with India to achieve that goal. And we'll soon find some very interesting agreements that have come up, some which have already been hinted at, a few signed, like there's a space agreement. There'll be an Indian astronaut sent to the International Space Station. There is an agreement on the visa sector, the
H-1B visa
issue. Yeah, so that it becomes easier to get, and the country that has the overwhelming majority of those visas are India. And then, in terms of what you were just talking about, the negative reflection, both the Prime Minister and Biden handled that well. They started out by saying the beginning words of our two constitutions are "we the people," and what that reflects, "we the people," that means a democracy, and the best antidote to the types of things that some of India's negative commentators are talking about is the fact that it has a democracy. And I tell people, look what happened, not too long ago in one of the major states in South India, the BJP lost.
Yeah.
And you had another chief minister come to power. There was no effort that I could see of trying to sort of prevent the BJP from winning, the Congress from winning, but it did. I think that was handled well, and it only came up really at the question period then. And you saw the reaction when Modi addressed the two houses of the Congress.
Yes.
It was, a great speech. It had humor, and it had, issues that were important to India, which actually reflected India's goal of being a power on the international stage, was reflected in that talk, and its culture. And I will get into the issue of what Hinduism is. It's often misinterpreted as a religion. Hinduism, in many ways, is a culture. So you can be, as the head of the RSS said not too long ago, you can be a Muslim and a Hindu. What he meant by that is, you can be culturally Indian or culturally Hindu, and that's reflected in a number of sort of issues like respect for
because the courts of our country also, Mr. Anderson, actually define Hindutva or Hinduism as a way of life. It's not defined as a religion, because that's the core ethos here. The philosophy is that it's a confluence of thoughts, ideals, and everybody has the opinion, can have their opinion. There is debate, there is discourse, but at the end there is samanvaya. That means everybody comes together and tries to live together in cohesion. Quickly, gentlemen, one question to all of you. Prime Minister also said the beauty of our country is we have 2,500 political parties active in our country, and 20 parties who are in power across various federal states. So these were some numbers, some facts which were an eye-opener. Starting with Mr. Anderson, do you believe that he has shown the way of how to quell narratives against India by not just addressing, just going to be defensive, but going on the offensive, but a positive offensive? Inform rather than counter.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think he had just the right argument to use. And, you mentioned one about the existence of 2,500 political parties. And the other one is that I mentioned you had a major state in the South, which was lost by the BJP to the Congress. And so as far as I know, there haven't been any efforts to distort elections or to prevent elections from taking place, and it is the best protector of democracy that you have in India. And I think he handled it well. So did Biden, as a matter, which is I found very interesting. Biden made essentially the same argument, and you saw at the dinner, for those who could stay up late enough to watch the dinner. You had a similar comments that came, and Modi came across, to be quite frank, much more articulate than our own president, as a person who had sort of points to make, but reflecting the fact of appreciating his audience and the visit as it had gone, and I think he justifiably he probably is extremely pleased by the way that things went. And I was looking at the Indian embassy people who were in the audience, and you could see that they were pleased by the reaction as well.
Right. Mr. Gautier?
Yeah, the third point I want to make, all right, there are many political parties in India. That's not necessarily a good thing because there's a lot of chaos. The third point I want to make is that China has a much worse human rights record than India, but Mr. Biden or anybody would not dare attack China because the Chinese would retaliate. Now, Hindus never retaliate. Hindus always take, you slap a Hindu, and he's ready to get slapped a second time. So unless, the Indian government and Hindus in particular become a little tougher and retaliate when they're attacked economically and politically, it'll go on. It'll go on because, all these people, they know that they're getting away with, slandering and attacking the Hindus and maligning the Hindus. So unless Hindus become tougher and unless Hindus in the United States stand up more for their country, instead of having a photo op with a senator or a congressman, they become more united, because there are 3 million Hindus in the United States. They're doing very well, most of them. Unless they unite under one banner and they stand up for their country, it'll go on. I'm sorry to say, but the slandering of India and Hindus will go on.
You make a fair point. You make a fair point, but I think there is a subtle change or a slow change in the posture and, of course, the tone and tenor that's being led by the foreign minister and the prime minister themselves. And there is an urging of getting everybody together under this concept of Indiahood and not have their own groups, 500 plus, in some of the regions in US itself. David Froligy, your final comment. Do you think he's been able to set certain narratives right?
Yes, I'd also like to bring in some other points.
Yes, sir.
India has more elections than any other country in the world, with all the state, local, community, and going on. So it's the most democratic country in action. Modi himself has participated in probably more democratic elections and won more of them, often by landslides, than any other leader over the last 10 years. So democracy is vibrant and alive in India. There are Muslim parties, Christian parties, all these groups have their influences. And Hindus have been slow to be political. Hindus are the least political people in the world in terms of voting, even in India. And my message to the Hindus, you have to vote if you want to be respected. And the lack of the Hindu vote and retaliation by voting has been one of the reasons why the Hindus are not respected and why the election propaganda and media goes to the anti-Hindu forces. So that must be borne in mind.
Right.
There is definitely a change. Everybody in the world seems, at least at a political and geopolitical level, knows about Narendra Modi. Almost nobody knew who Manmohan Singh was, much less what he stood for. India is on the stage. And when you get on the stage, you are going to be criticized, because when you're on the stage, somebody else who wants to be on the stage is not going to be there, or they're going to have to be there with you.
Right.
So there will be criticism for India coming up, but the fact is India is there in New York, it's there in Washington, D.C., the Indians are there, and look at the beautiful temples. Now you have these wonderful Swaminarayan temples in the United States. You have a Hindu presence. You have a Hindu prime minister in UK. So it is changing, but much more needs to be done. Francois is quite right. And specific challenging of distortions must go on, not just simply general factors involved. I do see this as happening. And again, this is a wonderful transformative event. Let's first honor and respect it, and then move forward with renewed strength, and not just simply defense, but projecting India and its great place in future for the world.
You talked about temples. Now there is just going to be the installation of temples in Milipitas and also in San Francisco, and of course an inauguration in Boston. And this is being done of Lakshmi Narasimha temples. That's what I've just got an update. I thought I should just share it since you talked about more temples coming up across the US of A. Walter Anderson, Francois Gautier and David Frawley, namaste and thank you so much. Such a pleasure to speak to you, gentlemen, and I look forward to more conversations very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get a move on, ladies and gentlemen. Zaka Jacob is ready to join us live because a new chapter has been unlocked in the India-US relationship. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrapping up his whirlwind trip to the US, and that comes to a closure towards the wee hours of Saturday. 5:40 a.m. on Saturday, India time, is when he'll take off for Egypt. That's the schedule, but this visit of the Prime Minister has been remarkable. You ask why? Well, India and the US have inked several deals which will further bolster the ties between the two nations. From tech to trade, defense to semiconductor, space to artificial intelligence, the two nations have launched several new initiatives and taking Make in India and Make for the World mantra forward. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be meeting Microsoft Satya Nadella, Apple's Tim Cook, Google's Sundar Pichai, OpenAI's Sam Altman, and NASA's Administrator Bill Nelson and Sunita Williams. So there's a lot that's going to happen. We'll take you through the details in just a bit. But first, let's go across to Zakir Jacob. Zakir Jacob, good early morning. You still got the legs to go around. It's been quite a whirlwind tour for you too. What's on the schedule today?
It's a rainy morning. Good morning from Washington, D.C. It's been raining intermittently ever since we came here a couple of days ago. But today, the forecast is for a rainy day. But lots of sunshine when it comes to the India-US relationship because technology, I think, seems to be the springboard. And there's an acknowledgement from both sides that technology is what will help both sides sort of leapfrog this relationship. So in about half an hour's time, the Prime Minister will be meeting with the who's who of the tech world here in America. There's a roundtable that's been organized in the White House. So Tim Cook of Apple, Sundar Pichai of Google will be there, Sam Altman of OpenAI. The biggest names in tech, Andrew Jassy of Amazon, will all be meeting with the Prime Minister and with President Biden. It's a tech CEO's conclave or roundtable that's been arranged at the White House. And I think, just going to the point that you were trying to make, there were a great number of deals that were signed, the transfer of jet engine technology, the buying of the drones, the consulates being opened and so on. But I think what this visit will be remembered for the most as, 10 years from now is I think this is a watershed because both India and the United States are telling each other, both at the leadership level and to their people, that, look, we are willing to make an investment in each other. I think President Biden yesterday at the state dinner basically said America's future is intertwined with India's future. It's a bit like what happened between US and China 30, 40 years ago, right? In the late 1970s, after Richard Nixon's famous visit in 1972, the United States took a bet on China, saying that this is going to be the factory of the world for the next 30 years. That's how China transformed itself economically from the late 1970s to the early 2010s, just before the Xi Jinping era. It went from under $1 trillion to now a 20 trillion plus economy. Right. The same bet. The message that's coming out of this trip is that same bet they're willing to make on India. Of course, there's far more convergences with India. It's a democracy, there's rule of law, there's shared values. So there's far more convergences between the US and India right now than there has been ever between the US and China. The question is, are both parties willing to unlock that potential? And I think the indication came from both sides, certainly from the leadership, that the future is theirs to take.
Well, that quickly just asking you, is America in the same strong position as it was between the 70s till the 2010s today to be able to enable that with India? Or has that situation changed? And is India cognizant of that? Things are different now in the 2020s.
Well, look, I mean, of course, everybody says, America's best days are behind it. But fact of the matter is, it is the #1 economy in the world. I mean, it is the only 30 trillion plus economy in the world and will continue to be so for some time. China has been slowing. I don't think anyone's expecting China to overtake the US as the largest economy anytime in the near future, at least. In terms of military, the United States is way above. I mean, it spends 10 times more than the number 2, 3, and 4 put together. So in terms of even just military technology, it's far ahead of where the rest of the world is. I think for India, the question is this. Yes, India is a great power. It is the 5th largest economy. It will become the 3rd largest economy very soon. But the bet and the calculation that India needs to make and to take is, if you need to leapfrog, you need the help of the United States. Not just the United States, you need the help of the Western world. Are you willing to make that bet? And yes, there will be differences along the way. There will be differences on Russia, Ukraine. There will be differences again. One of the things that you talked about a moment ago is this whole record of democracy and human rights. Well, America is not a perfect democracy. Neither is India. And those differences will be there. But I think the larger messaging that everyone from the leadership certainly is trying to send out is, we are willing to make that bet. We're willing to make that investment in each other for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And that's why they believe that when this visit will be seen 10 years from now, they will look at this visit as that marker. Here is where it began.
Right. Zakir, it's going to be a busy day, lots of handshake moments, and it's going to be a lot of fanfare, and you're going to see the who's who So have a great day, and we're going to keep coming back to you. We're not going to let you rest easy. It's the final day of this whirlwind tour. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Let's go straight across to Adel Nazarian, foreign policy analyst and CEO US Blockchain, back with us, PhD with us, and also Group Captain Dr. R.K. Narang, Senior Fellow at the Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. Namaste. Thank you very, very much. Let me ask you, Adel, how would you see the deals that have been inked? It's a forbidden technology that's now been transferred to India with the confidence that there will be no proliferation. When you look at the jet engine technology, the drones, and also the setting up by Applied and also by Lam and also by Micron in the semiconductor sector, in the hardware arena. There are a lot of commitments which US had been reluctant in the past, which is given into this time. What's changed?
Thank you. I think it centers honestly around trust at the end of the day. And India is one of the most advanced technological nations in terms of innovation, their STEM output, science, technology, engineering, math. America, as well as the epicenter of STEM and technological innovation. And we've seen other nations that have actually used their technological capabilities to spy on and to steal and replicate from the U.S. in a very questionable manner. And throughout the shared history and alliance between America and India, which has only strengthened over the years, they've never once misused or taken advantage of their capabilities to do that. And I think that's where the differentiating factor is, where America openly decided to, as you said, pen those historic deals and to forge an even stronger and more trusting relationship with India going forward.
The space collaboration, Group Captain, are the Indians, is America trying to learn how to do it in the Kifayat way, where India spends millions, we end up spending billions. So how do we save a few more dollars there? How do we get it right the first time? Is that what we're going to teach them as we put our astronauts at the space station?
I think learning will be both sides. We have an advantage of doing it in a frugal way. They have an advantage of having learned the most advanced technologies. So the combination of this will be win-win for both. So far, India was a democracy, US was a democracy. Somehow, our interest did not reach a level that it could lead to next level. So this is an opportunity for us, and I think it's a transformation of India-US relationship after a very, very long time. It was always a promising relationship, but never translated into the real domain. But more important part is India has challenges on its northern and the western front. It's well known. China is not only country which is impacting India, but it is impacting the global order. And I think that is what has brought these two countries together. And India is a growing economy. India's requirement of its defense and industrial sector is increasing. And global partners are willing to share with technology with India. Now, India, US being a democracy, I think we will certainly had those basic elements. It was just the leadership had to take it to the next level. So space is a very, very important collaboration. But I also see when you look at the Reaper deal, now so far we had taken C-17, C-130, Apache, Chinook. Never ever it happened that US agreed to set up a manufacturing facility in India. So at least initial step in manufacturing or at least assembly of Reaper and with Kalyani building aerostructures and also DRDO signing a collaboration with the US partners on certain technologies for the future drone technologies. I think this is much a bigger change. And I think it is also an indication of Indian stakeholders coming together to really talk to their counterparts in the US as to what we need. If we are seeking what Kalyani in the private sector wants, what DRDO in the public sector wants in a defense deal, which is of the defense forces. So I think all stakeholders have come under one roof, demanding what is required and negotiating with our partners to get what is required. Now, when we look at the aero engine technology, it's a very niche technology. It's a very important technology. We not only have a LCA Mark II, we have a twin-engine deck-based fighter, then we have an advanced medium combat aircraft. So it's a huge order because it's not only the aircraft which will be, powered for the first time, but in the lifetime they will be replaced with the newer engines when they finish a certain life span. So it's a huge initiative where transfer of technology is there, but there are some restrictions when we look at it.
Right.
Still upgradation, export, those issues will have to be worked out. And when we look at the AMCA engine, it
Right.
will be a more powerful engine. It means this G414 will have to be modified, upgraded to meet the requirement of AMCA. So the critical questions would be, what will be the involvement of Indian scientists in the development? What will be the IPR arrangement between India and US? And how will we look at the further manufacturing and export? If we come to a common ground, I think it will be a great relationship and it will be a long-lasting relationship because these relationships do not end in a short time period.
Yeah, it
Now,
is for
if I come to
it is for a
Yeah.
long it is for a long time and it's a long period, but it's a big if too. But Adele, does this also is this also an indication to America's allies that start trusting India, start investing in India because this is the market of the future? This is the clear shift away from China?
I truly believe it is a tangible and definitive shift away from China. I think the world suffered and is still licking its wounds from the tremendous supply chain disaster that happened as a result of the COVID pandemic, of China's inability to obviously produce and to keep up the end of their bargain in terms of the promises they had kept. And it made the world realize that it's time to diversify their portfolio, so to speak. And I believe that now that India has taken it has been working on this for many years. And of course, they've taken now the actual steps towards working on upping their manufacturing capabilities. And obviously you have in Africa, other nations. I think it's going to, frankly, this partnership is going to provide a newfound set of opportunity economically, defense-wise, culturally for the East and the West. So many nations that previously hadn't had a seat at the table, frankly. I like to also just go back to the previous segment that you had, which is wonderful, that not only does India now have a place on the stage, but they have a seat at the table.
Yes.
And that's what's most important.
Yeah, you're either on the table or you're at the table. So it's better to be at the table rather than being on the table. And India is at the table. So I think for a nation of 1.4 billion people, 20% of the world's population, nearly if not more, India's time had come long back, but we had to go back and convince the rest of the world that we deserve a place. That is happening. But the challenge is also delivery, Group Captain. India has to live up to the potential. We have to be able to action all these deals and agreements and hit the ground running. Do you think we're ready to do that?
No, we have the potential. When you look at it, if you look at Indo-US Innovation Bridge, which is basically a platform to accelerate, connection between startups, governments, academia, and bring capital. Now, it's a process where problem statements have to be formed by the users. They have to formulate, and there are various mechanisms required. How will the funding come? How will the problem statements be made? Who will carry out the assessment of those problems? How will the IPR be generated out of these innovations will be used? So there are a lot of work required by various stakeholders in India and in the US. The US has an advantage because innovation culture already exists in all the formations of their government. India has to really work hard to make it because when you look at, let's say, IDEX and the corresponding innovation platform of the US platform is already evolved. IDEX has also come of age in the last few years, but still working with another country on these areas will require much more work from our side, some changes in the procedures, some innovative ways have to be found, how we work with the foreign users, foreign developers, and how when the product comes out,
right,
how do we commercialize? these are very, very technical parts. When you look at the India's own industry,
correct,
these challenges are faced. So there are a lot of work which needs to be done by the Indians
but I
as
think
well.
one aspect is that we need to have collectively as a nation a consciousness to understand that it's now or never. Yahi samay hai, sahi samay is what the Prime Minister has said. This is the time and this is the right time for India to leapfrog and truly become a developed nation by 2047. Let's hope this visit, the deals that have been signed and the intent that's been shown even from the American administration further drives us into that direction, which is for the greater good of humanity and the planet, and of course, more importantly, democracies to thrive over autocracies. Adele and Group Captain Naren, thank you so much. I've run out of time. We're going to take a very, very short break, and we've got Union Minister Rajiv Chandrasekharji telling us more about the impact of the deals in the tech department or the tech domain when we come back. Stay with us.
एक नया अध्याय जुड़ा है, एक नई दिशा और नई ऊर्जा मिली है। फ्रेंड्स, भारत अमेरिका की व्यापार और निवेश साझेदारी दोनों देशों के लिए ही नहीं बल्कि वैश्विक अर्थव्यवस्था के लिए भी महत्वपूर्ण है। आज अमेरिका भारत का सबसे बड़ा ट्रेड पार्टनर है। हमने निर्णय लिया है कि व्यापार से जुड़े लंबित मुद्दों को समाप्त कर नई शुरुआत की जाए। आईसेट यानी इनिशिएटिव फॉर क्रिटिकल एंड इमर्जिंग टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे तकनीकी सहयोग के महत्वपूर्ण फ्रेमवर्क के रूप में उभरा है। आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, सेमीकंडक्टर्स, स्पेस, क्वांटम और टेलीकॉम जैसे क्षेत्रों में अपना सहयोग बढ़ाकर हम एक मजबूत और फ्यूचरिस्टिक साझेदारी की रचना कर रहे हैं। अमेरिका की माइक्रोन, गूगल तथा एप्लाइड मटेरियल जैसी कंपनियों द्वारा भारत में निवेश करने का निर्णय इस फ्यूचरिस्टिक साझेदारी का प्रतीक है। इस यात्रा के दौरान मुझे अमेरिका के कुछ अन्य सीईओज के साथ मुलाकात करने का भी अवसर मिला। उनके साथ हुई चर्चाओं में भी मैंने भारत के प्रति उत्साह और एक सकारात्मक सोच महसूस किया। हम दोनों सहमत हैं कि हमारी स्ट्रैटेजिक टेक्नोलॉजी पार्टनरशिप को सार्थक करने में गवर्नमेंट्स, बिजनेसेस और एकेडमिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस का साथ आना बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। क्लीन एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन में भारत और अमेरिका के साझे विजन को इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए हमने कई महत्वपूर्ण इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं। इसमें ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन, विंड एनर्जी, बैटरी स्टोरेज, कार्बन कैप्चर जैसे क्षेत्र शामिल है। हमने यह भी निर्णय लिया कि वैश्विक अनिश्चितताओं के बीच भारत और अमेरिका ट्रस्टेड पार्टनर्स की तरह रिलायबल, सिक्योर और रेजिलिएंट ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन और वैल्यू चेन तैयार करेंगे। भारत और अमेरिका के बीच करीबी रक्षा सहयोग हमारे आपसी विश्वास और साझा रणनीतिक प्राथमिकताओं का प्रतीक है। पुराने समय के बायर सेलर्स रिलेशनशिप पीछे छोड़कर आज हम ट्रांसफर ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी, को डेवलपमेंट और को प्रोडक्शन की तरफ बढ़ चुके हैं। जनरल इलेक्ट्रिक द्वारा भारत में टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रांसफर के माध्यम से इंजन बनाने का निर्णय एक लैंडमार्क एग्रीमेंट है। इससे दोनों देशों में रोजगार के नए अवसर भी खुलेंगे। यह आने वाले समय में हमारे रक्षा सहयोग को एक नया स्वरूप देगा। इस सहयोग में दोनों देशों के रक्षा उद्योग और स्टार्टअप्स महत्वपूर्ण पार्टनर्स हैं। उन्हें आपस में जोड़ना हमारे डिफेंस इंडस्ट्रियल रोडमैप का मुख्य उद्देश्य है। स्पेस साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी में हमारा गहरा और वर्षों पुराना सहयोग रहा है। आज हमने आर्टेमिस अकॉर्ड्स में शामिल होने का निर्णय लेकर हमारे स्पेस कोऑपरेशन में एक लंबी उड़ान भरी है। संक्षेप में कहूं तो भारत और अमेरिका की साझेदारी के लिए इवन स्काई इज नॉट द लिमिट। फ्रेंड्स, हमारे संबंधों का सबसे महत्वपूर्ण स्तंभ हमारे पीपल टू पीपल टाइज है। भारतीय मूल के 40 लाख से भी ज्यादा लोग आज अमेरिका की प्रगति में महत्वपूर्ण योगदान दे रहे हैं। आज सुबह व्हाइट हाउस में इतनी बड़ी संख्या में भारतीय लोगों की उपस्थिति इस बात का प्रमाण है कि इंडियन अमेरिकन्स हमारे संबंधों की असली ताकत है। इन संबंधों को और गहरा करने के लिए हम अमेरिका द्वारा बेंगलुरु और अहमदाबाद में कॉन्सुलेट्स खोलने के निर्णय का स्वागत करते हैं। उसी तरह सिएटल में भारत का नया कॉन्सुलेट खोलेंगे। फ्रेंड्स, आज की बैठक में हमने कई क्षेत्रीय एवं वैश्विक मुद्दों पर चर्चा की।
Your Excellency, President Biden,
दोनों देशों के
delegates of both countries, friends from the media.
Joining us now is Union Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar, because there are some landmark deals that have been inked, some commitments that have been made both in hardware and software. Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, namaste and thank you for your time. Big achievement. Let's start with the semiconductor aspect, the Micron investment, not just the packaging facility, but also along with that training and skilling. Both come under your domain, so kindly explain to our viewers.
Look, Anand, as you know that the two things that the Honorable Prime Minister has done in our space, which is one is to expand the electronics manufacturing so significantly and so deeply in the last 8 years, from 1 lakh crores in 2014 to almost 25 lakh crores by 2026. And that, along with the fact that in December 2021, he laid out an ambition for India to becoming a semiconductor nation. Over the last 18 months, we have done a lot of work in making progress towards that goal of India being a semiconductor nation, because that impacts our electronics ambitions as well. And yesterday, these announcements, these investment announcements by 3 very big names in the global semiconductor industry, Micron, which is a memory leader in NAND and memory modules, Lam Research and Applied Materials, that are 2 very important companies in the semiconductor value chain. They deal with manufacturing equipment and manufacturing technologies. These 3 companies have, in a sense, announced big investments into India and reaffirmed their partnership with India as a trusted player in the semiconductor value chain. So I think these 3 investments are very significant, very tectonic in the way they accelerate our semiconductor ecosystem growth, but also it also accelerates India's growth as an electronics trusted player in the electronics global supply chain as well as the semiconductor supply chain. So very deep, meaningful investment decisions that will go a long way in continuing the momentum of growth of the semiconductor ecosystem in India.
What is the nature of investment that we can expect? We are given to understand that even Foxconn, Vedanta have now been re-invited for a bid. So what's the horizon, investment horizon?
Look, the packaging plant is a $3 billion plant, 2.75 billion to be precise, which is a significant 25,000 crore project. It is extremely significant. It's significant not just because it's a big plant, but in terms of what it is going to manufacture. It is going to manufacture NAND and memory modules that will power mobile phones, that will power servers, that will power storage solutions like data centers, and will power laptops. So memory is almost like the bread and butter of every electronic product that consumers use today, and this plant will supply memory to almost all of these categories of electronics products that are manufactured in India. The jobs that are going to be created as a consequence is estimated to be about 20,000 direct and indirect. And similarly, Lam and Lam Research and Applied Materials, two very important companies, are making investments that will create almost 60 to 80,000 very highly talented, leading edge type of talent that will be deployed and that will have the capabilities to work in these very cutting edge areas of VLSI manufacturing and VLSI fabs.
But that was the other aspect, the skilling of hardware professionals, because we are largely seen as a software and a tech-driven company, whereas the soft skills are good, programming skills are good, but the hardware professionals. Is the horizon about creating more than 1.5 lakh hardware professionals with this tie-up with Lam and Applied Materials?
Oh, absolutely. You know that we have already implemented in this academic year a curriculum for VLSI engineers that is aimed at creating 85,000 VLSI engineers from our higher academic network of institutions and universities and colleges. That curriculum was decided and shaped by global industry leaders from the large leading semiconductor companies of the world, and that is being implemented by the Ministry of Education as we speak. So we have absolutely confidence that in the coming years, the talent from our education ecosystem, the youth that are going to come out as VLSI engineers, is going to make India a leader in electronics and semiconductors, in addition to continuing our growth and in a sense a global presence in innovation in IT and ITES segments of the digital economy.
Rajiv ji, the Prime Minister also touched upon agreements that have been signed as far as quantum computing and AI is concerned. When he said AI is also America, India, but we know that there are huge challenges which AI presents. So what's the agreement on that part?
Look, if you look at it, Anand, these four areas that are now subject matter in terms of at least the areas of technology, which is high performance computing, quantum, AI and semiconductors. These four really are the critical and emerging technologies that are going to disrupt, shape, transform the future of the economy, future of technology in the coming years, in the coming decade. And not only that, they are going to create opportunities of a kind that is unprecedented. So this partnership of India-US is a partnership that is going to deal with these cutting emerging technologies that are going to be so transformative of our lives and of the world at large in the coming years. So I think that is at a broad macro level, this partnership will shape the future of technology in general, and in particular these four very, very critical technologies. What are the nuts and bolts of that? I think over time, as our ecosystems interact, or our academic institutions interact, as our startups interact, as investors and startups meet, the contours about the many, many areas of partnership and cooperation will emerge. But yesterday was an historic day where US, the global leader in technology for several decades, and certainly the world's most powerful nation, has, in a sense, made India its equal partner in the quest of these four critical emerging technologies in the future.
Well, while the Prime Minister got adulation bipartisan across the alley, and there were lots of whistles and standing ovations and claps, applauses for his speech, closer home, the opposition has set the agenda to come together to defeat the BJP. That's just been announced. That's going to be the agenda in 2024. Final question, Rajiv ji.
I can only say good luck. I think people who can't build a bridge successfully despite trying 3 times, and people who have a history of entitlement and corruption, if they think that they are going to be given a mandate by the people of India, the youth of India, to steer this boat. I think they're living in delusion land. But look, it's like I always like to say, it's a fundamental right of people to be delusional, and the opposition certainly should exercise that fundamental right repeatedly and frequently.
Rajiv Chandrasekharji, thank you very much. It's indeed great tidings as far as the tech business is concerned. Let's hope that the plan comes into action and fruition sooner than later, and we see these semiconductor facilities on ground sooner than later. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rajiv ji.
Hello there, and a very warm welcome to this special edition of Brass Tacks, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. We're overlooking the beautiful Capitol Hill building on my left, and of course the White House is just a couple of blocks away. Today is the third and final day of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States. A whole host of deals have been signed.